Chapter 1. The Ash Born Beneath, Twin Suns. In the beginning, there was only heat, not the warmth of light, but the hunger of stars long condemned. A desert world, lost in the outer murmurs of the galaxy, Tatooine. It did not appear on ancient charts, it was not marked by noble blood or holy wars. And yet the Force knew, the Force remembered. It began with dust, grains older than language. They whispered over bones and broken hulls of ships that would never rise again. The winds, eternal and unkind, caressed no one's skin, only lashed, only scoured. The world did not cradle life. It chained it, and in the shadow of twin suns, a woman wept alone. Her name was Shmi. She had once dreamed of flowers. Now she dreamed of freedom. Neither dream would come true, for she was of the slave caste, bound not by shackles of iron, but of economy and silence. And from her womb, without father, without right, without choice, came the Ashborn. Anakin. He did not cry as other children cry. He breathed, and the Force shuddered. He blinked, and destiny recoiled. There was no name yet for what he was, only murmurs in places older than temples. The midichlorians, ancient messengers of balance and decay, sang within his blood, like a chorus of stars collapsing. The boy would smile, but it was a hollow joy. For even as an infant, the galaxy watched him with one eye open, suspicious, hungry, afraid. And the suns above, they burned, but they did not warm. They stared down, cruel and eternal, as if knowing that the child who crawled beneath them was not of this cycle, not of this time. He was too much feeling, too much power, too much future. The Force began to twist around him, not as servant, but as witness. Animals bowed or fled. Droids lingered too long, as if caught in thought. Dreams came to him, unbidden, of stars being born and swallowed, of temples buried beneath blood, of a voice calling his name from across millennia. He built things, not toys, but truths. Machines he had never seen, yet understood. Engines that murmured back when touched. Other children laughed at him. Adults whispered when he passed. Even the huts blind to most things but coin paused when he walked by, as if for a moment. The wind carried a warning in his steps, and yet he was a slave, owned, traded, marked. The Force, that great ocean, had birthed a storm, and cast it into chains. One night, beneath the gaze of the twin moons, Shmi watched him sleep. Her hands, scarred from labor, hovered above his brow. She did not touch him. She dared not. "Who are you?" she whispered, voice trembling. But the Force did not answer. It never does, not when the answer is a warning. And in his sleep the boy spoke, not in basic, but in the tongue of dreams. Names long buried fell from his lips. Mortis, Malachor, Tenebrae, the one who whispers from the core. He did not remember them when he awoke, but the Force remembered. Anakin Skywalker grew not in seasons, but in cracks. Each year was a fracture. Each moment a prophecy waiting to fail. At 5, he piloted a pod engine no child could comprehend. At 7, he rewired a translator droid using intuition alone. At 9, he saved a stranger from a sandstorm by following a vision he did not understand. When asked how he knew what to do, he would only shrug and say, "I just felt it." But it was not feeling, it was summoning. The Force was using him, even then, wearing him like a veil, like a mask. He was not chosen. He was built far from this world. In temples of crystal and gold, the Jedi meditated in ignorance. Their archives held whispers of the Chosen One, a being born not from flesh, but from correction, a child of no father, whose destiny would bring balance to the Force. But balance is not peace. Balance is equilibrium, and to achieve it, fire must meet ice, and blood must answer blood. They did not know that the Chosen One had already come. They did not know that the stars were shifting because of a slave, but the Sith felt it, in cold tombs beneath Dazun, in forgotten chambers on Korriban, in holocrons sealed by madness. The name began to echo, Skywalker, not yet Vader, not yet Destroyer, but already written. And so the boy lived. He bled, he built, he raced. But beneath every laugh was a scream and beneath every triumph was a thread pulling him deeper into the web. He looked to the sky, often not with hope, but with hunger. He did not want to see the stars. He wanted to escape into them. The Force stirred, the Force circled, and in the great stillness, something watched. The first move had been made, the first breath taken, and far away, a cloaked figure turned toward the outer rim, whispering to himself in a voice older than republics. He is waking. Chapter 2. The slaves who dreamt of Starstet 1 did not change. The sands still screamed, the suns still mocked, and the chains still sang softly in the wind, not with cruelty, but with custom. The galaxy had forgotten this place, but destiny had not. In the bowels of Mos Espa, under rusted domes and broken gears, the boy built escape. Not metaphor, not dream, engines, wings, velocity, things that moved away. He did not play with other children. He outpaced them. Anakin Skywalker, age 9, constructed language from machines, found prayer in code. He did not know why he could see the future split open seconds before it happened. But he did. He raced. He never should have. Human reflexes could not match Podracer's. Screaming chariots of fire flung through canyons of death. And yet he flew them not with courage, but with fury, a fury he could not name. Then the shadow arrived. A ship, humming with Republic markings, carved the air above Mos Espa like a forgotten memory. Out stepped a man draped in coarse robes, his hair bound by the old ways, his voice soft, but eyes sharp with knowing. Qui-Gon Jinn, a Jedi, but not like the others. He walked as one who distrusted the temple, who saw truths too wild for doctrine. He saw Anakin, and the Force trembled, not in recognition, but in warning. The boy spoke plainly. "Are you here to free us?" The Jedi frowned, not because he had no answer, but because the only true answer was no. Still, Qui-Gon studied the child. He saw the patterns in his aura, the storm beneath skin. A vergence, he would later say, a convergence of force, energy so dense it threatened to rewrite balance itself. He tested the boy's blood. The device nearly cracked. His count is over 20,000. Qui-Gon whispered to the wind. Not even Master Yoda. No father, no Jedi origin. And yet the Force wrapped around him like breath. A prophecy began to burn. The ancient lines, sealed in holocrons, dusted with death, born of no man through the womb of sorrow. He shall bring balance, and in balance, fire. Qui-Gon saw salvation. The Jedi Council saw imbalance, but the Council was far away, and the desert gave no time for caution, so Qui-Gon gambled. He spoke with Watto, the winged slaver whose tongue dripped with greed. Wagers were made, lives placed on the dice. A Podris would decide destiny, not wars, not kings, a race. The night before, Anakin worked alone in the garage, tuning his podracer. He did not speak, not to his mother, not to the Jedi, not even to the Force, but inside him, a scream grew. He wanted freedom, but not for its own sake. He wanted to escape the feeling that something vast and terrible was watching his every breath. And so he raced, he flew, through boiling canyons, past Tusken rifles and Razor Rock. He moved as if he had already seen the course in 1,000 dead dreams. Qui watched, not with awe, but dread. The boy did not flinch. He did not fear. He did not blink when Sebulba exploded into flame. He did not blink when he crossed the line. The crowd roared, but Anakin only looked at the sky as if daring it to speak back. Freedom was won, or so they said, but only his freedom. Shmi would remain. Her face, tight with pride and sorrow, did not cry. Slaves were taught not to. Go, she told him. Go, make your life. But Anakin shattered as he turned away. Something in him tore loose, like a wing pulled from a bird. He would carry that wound forever. The first true abandonment. Not of love, but of belonging. As they walked to the ship, Qui-Gon placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. You'll be a Jedi, he said, a great one. But already, from the alleyways of fate, shadows stirred. A Sith, Maul, born of vengeance and forged in hatred, arrived to retrieve what his master had foreseen. The chosen one was not theirs. He was not meant to live. He was meant to burn. Lights clashed in fire and shrieks. Qui-Gon fell. Obi-Wan, young and wounded, rose in vengeance and duty, striking Maul in twain. Victory was hollow. Death had already taken root. Anakin stood aboard the Jedi ship, face empty. He had never seen a lightsaber. He had never seen a man die. Now he had seen both, and the Force had done nothing to stop it. As the stars opened before him, the galaxy inhaled. The chosen one was aboard. The Jedi would train him. They would try to shape him, but they were not sculptors. They were keepers of glass trying to hold a storm. And far away, in the undercurrent of the galaxy, the Sith Master smiled, whispering from behind closed eyes. It begins. Chapter 3. The Temple of Glass Minds. The stars bled into order. And from there light rose. Coruscant, the jewel of civilization, crowned in steel and worshipped in symmetry. It was a city of height without horizon, truth without question. It glittered, not in welcome, but in judgment. Here stood the Jedi Temple, 5 spires of ancient stone reborn in durasteel robes. They pierced the clouds like blades, monastic in design, unreachable in spirit. Within them walked guardians of peace, of knowledge, of control. They wore silence, like armor, but the Force, ever mocking, had sent them a storm. Anakin Skywalker. The boy stepped from starship onto polished floor, and the floor recoiled. The temple, carved from the bones of forgotten mountains, had not felt this presence in 1,000 years. A pull, a disruption, a whisper wrapped in skin. Master Windu's eyes narrowed. Master Yoda's ears bent forward, as if catching a vibration, lost to the others. The boy stood before them, unafraid, unreadable. Much fear in him, I sensed, too old, too angry, too full. They spoke not of what he was, only what he should not be, but fear, the Force knew, is not a flaw. It is a warning. Anakin watched as the Jedi debated his fate like scholars dissecting a corpse. Words like attachment, discipline, forbidden, circled him. No one asked what he had lost. No one asked if he missed his mother. No one asked if he dreamed of stars or fire or death. They saw him not as a child, but as a tool of prophecy they wished had never come. Still, he was accepted, not with joy, not with grace, with hesitation, as if admitting him would tip the scales into apocalypse. He studied, he obeyed. He bled through sparring and sweat through meditation. He learned forms of battle, of serenity, of shielding his thoughts from the minds of masters. But he did not forget the suns. He did not forget the chains. He did not forget the promise of freedom. Obi-1 watched him with care, but not with understanding. Their bond was forged from loss, not choice. Anakin was a brother, carved into the shape of a son, but Obi was not Qui-Gon, and the Force was not kind. At night, Anakin dreamed of his mother's voice, growing fainter each time, of fire rising from the Jedi spires, of his own hands, gloved in metal, choking the stars until they burst. He told no one. Dreams, the Jedi said, were illusions. But Anakin knew dreams were prophecies, and prophecies were curses spoken by dead gods. He began to question, why must love be a lie? Why must peace demand blindness? Why must the code silence the soul? The other younglings followed rules like breath. Anakin followed them like shackles. Once, in a silent corridor, he heard the whispers of the kyber crystals, not the crystals, within blades, but the ones still buried deep in the temple's roots. They called to him, not with light, but with hunger. One sang, "Do you know what you are?" Another hissed, "You are the knife hidden in prophecy's heart." He fled that place, but its voice never left. In council meetings, his questions were met with polite nods and cold redirection. In training, his power was praised but never trusted. In missions, he was paired with others, always watched, and so the boy learned to wear masks, to speak serenity while choking on fire, to bow with clenched fists. He loved the Jedi, but they did not love him. They loved what they thought he might be if tamed, if hollowed. The temple did not feel like home. It felt like a cage carved from crystal and the Force. It began to twist. Where once it had flowed cleanly through Anakin, it now hesitated, as if testing him, as if waiting. For every rule obeyed, a dream grew darker. For every lesson mastered, a vision turned crimson. He saw death. He saw Pam, though he did not know her name. He saw a figure cloaked in black armor, breathing like a dying god. He saw himself and did not look away. The Jedi Masters whispered among themselves, "He is the chosen one, but chosen by whom?" They never asked why the Force would need to be balanced. They never asked what imbalance the prophecy sought to correct. They never asked if they were the imbalance, and in the depths of the archives, beneath records never read, a Sith holocron blinked softly, unseen. Its voice cracked open into silence. The temple teaches blindness as wisdom, and calls it peace. And far away, deep in the underlayers of the Republic, a senator dressed in smiles whispered to himself beneath a palace of glass, "Soon the boy will beg for truth, and I will be ready." Chapter 4. The Woman in the Lake of Fire. It began not with a battle, but a glance. Years had passed. The boy who had once stared at stars in chains now wore robes of the Order, but the chains had only changed shape. He was a Jedi in name, a knight by right. But beneath it all, he was still Anakin. And then she returned, Padme, Midala. Senator, Sovereign, Flame of Naboo. She entered not like royalty, but like gravity. The temple air bent around her. The Force flinched. Anakin saw her again, After so many cycles of silence, and something in him broke open like a wound learning to sing. The code said, attachment is forbidden. The Force said, she is the beginning and the end. And Anakin, he listened to neither. Pob Dem did not fear him. Others bowed, hesitated, nodded. But she spoke as if he was still that dusty boy beneath Tatooine's twin suns. She did not see the prophecy. She saw the person. You've changed, she whispered, but not in fear. So have you, he replied, and meant every word. War had reshaped them both. The Clone Wars raged like fire across stars. Padma, wrapped in diplomacy, watched peace die slowly. Anakin, cloaked in Jedi armor, delivered that death with a blade. They met again in the corridors between duty. Briefings turned to confessions. Confessions turned to touch. And then, beneath the silver waters of Naboo, hidden, silent, sacred in its sin, they wed. No witnesses, no Jedi, no blessing from the Force, only stars, only the vow, I am yours. The Force did not rejoice. The Force grew still, as if unsure what had just taken root in its ancient soil. This was not attachment. This was devotion. And devotion unmeasured is the one thing the Force cannot predict. They met in secret, on warships, in ruined temples, in shadows, each. Time, Anakin returned to the temple, his face unchanged, his heart in flames. He was no longer two beings. He was fractured into three, Jedi, husband, prophecy, and each fought for dominance in silence. Palm saw his pain. She reached for it. But pain, when caged too long, becomes a weapon. He would not let her in fully, not out of mistrust, but because he feared what she would find. Visions, blood, children buried in dreams, his own hands soaked in crimson. He loved her more than breath, and still he feared her knowing. The war pressed tighter. Clones died in oceans of stars. Planets wept in the vacuum of Republic justice. Anakin rose in rank. He was praised, feared, and watched. The Council gave him missions, but not trust. They felt it, the flicker in his soul. The way the Force hummed too loud when he entered, and Padmam she began to suspect. Not of treason, not of darkness, but of burden. Tell me what haunts you, she asked one night, her voice barely above the wind off the Naboo lake. I see too much, he whispered, and not enough. When she told him she was pregnant, the galaxy stopped. Anakin wept. Not with joy, but terror. He had dreamed this, not the birth, the death, a woman screaming, a child wailing. His hands soaked and shaking, he held her close, but felt the future slipping like sand through his mechanical fingers. He would not lose her. He would burn the galaxy to prevent it. He would crush time. He would rend the Force itself in that moment. The prophecy turned, not against him, but into him, far away in chambers that reeked of incense and treachery. Chancellor Palpatine smiled. He did not need to pry. The boy had revealed everything without a word. Love, fear, desperation, soon. The Sith Lord whispered to himself. Soon he will come to me, not for power, but for mercy. The woman in the lake of fire had lit the match. The chosen one would carry the torch. And far away, in the vaults of Mortis, a statue of the sun cracked open along the spine. Chapter 5. Clone War, Echo War. War within the galaxy burned, not all at once, but slowly. Like a star collapsing in secret. The Clone Wars, to the outer systems, chaos, to the core, justification. to the Jedi duty, to the Force, a scream wrapped in silence. And in the center of this slow unmaking walked Anakin Skywalker, General. Night, prophecy in motion, man unraveling. The Council handed him command, but withheld belief. They praised his victories, but not his voice. He fought in the trenches, led from the front, bled alongside clones born to die for a war not there. Owned to them, he was not myth, he was brother, he joked. He saved, he mourned the fallen, but deep within, he saw their faces and wondered, how many of you must die for peace to be purchased in guilt? His Padawan, Ahsoka Tano, became his echo, not in obedience, but in questioning. She was fierce, she was faithful, but more than that, she began to see. The war changed him. Not all at once, but in erosion. Kindness sharpened into command. Mercy folded into suspicion, she asked. He deflected, she believed. He hesitated, until she was betrayed, not by him, but by the order itself, framed, cast out. Ahsoka walked away, her back turned not on Anakin, but on everything he still clung to. "I'm sorry," he said, voice cracking. "I know," she whispered, "and that's what hurts." He watched her disappear into the shadows, and the wound widened. The Council, who had stripped her, asked him to understand. The same Council that watched him without trust, spoke in riddles. Used him as a blade, but refused to hold the hilt. He returned to battle. But the battlefield was no longer stars and strategy. It was within. Each mission became heavier, each loss louder. The Separatists built droids. The Republic buried men. He began to question who the war truly served. The Force offered no answers. Was it ever about peace, or was it always about shaping who I must become? And in the shadows of Coruscant, Palpatine waited, not as Sith, not yet as confidant, as father. As listener, he praised Anakin's instinct, not his obedience. He whispered of truths too large for Jedi minds. The Force is not your master, it is your inheritance. Anakin listened, because no one else did, and the Chancellor never asked him. To feel less, only to understand more. The war raged. Grievous fled and struck again. Dooku, Sith apprentice and marionette, danced to the war drums. But Anakin grew colder, not cruel, but cut off. Each death etched a line deeper into the mask he did not yet wear. When he closed his eyes, he saw his mother still dying. He saw Padme fading in his arms. He saw Ahsoka walking away again and again, a loop in his dreams. That refused to close, and the Council began to speak of spying. On the Chancellor, they gave Anakin the task. He trusts you, they said. Use that. But trust is a bridge that collapses beneath too many footsteps. And in that command, the final fracture began. Palpatine smiled. They ask you to betray me, but they already betrayed you. The Jedi did not see what they had created. They spoke of balance. They preached peace. But in Anakin they had made a vessel of fire and handed it a doctrine made of glass and the Force. Ancient and uncertain, began to twist in its currents. Anakin Skywalker stood between two towers, one of light, brittle and blind, one of shadow, warm and waiting. And still he did not fall. He only leaned, and far away, in the ruins beneath the Jedi Temple, sealed since the old wars, a buried holocron awakened. Its voice, ancient and broken, whispered the forbidden line of the Sith. Peace is a lie. There is only passion. Chapter 6. Visions of a woman dying. It began in dreams. As it always does, At first the visions came only in flickers, a whisper, a shadow, a sob. But soon they took form, sound, color, pain in his sleep. Anakin Skywalker saw the woman he loved, Padme, reaching for him through mist and fire, her belly round with child, her face twisted not in anger, but suffering. He saw her scream. He saw her gasp for breath. He saw her die. He awoke with a cry, one that did not echo in the Force, but was swallowed by it. He clutched his chest, as if the moment had already happened, as if time had bent and fate had leaped forward without his permission. He did not speak of it, not at first, because the fear was too real, too sharp. To certain end fear, the Jedi had said, was the path to the dark side. But now, fear was all he had. The visions came again, clearer, louder, crueler each time. The ending was the same. Pad's body broken, her hand falling limp, and his own breath stolen in guilt. He sought answers. He meditated. He searched the archives. He asked the Force itself. Nothing, only silence, only dread, only that wound in the world that only he seemed able to feel. Finally, he told her, Padme, ever strong, tried to smile through the storm in his eyes. Dreams pass in time, she said softly, but he shook his head. Not these. Not this. He took her hand. I saw you die, Pog. I saw it, and I won't let it happen. He turned to the Jedi. First, Obi-Wan, who listened, but answered with doctrine. Dreams are often warnings, Anakin, but they're not destiny. Let go of what you fear to lose. Let go, let go. They always said the same thing, as if loss was a virtue, as if love was sin. The Council offered no wisdom, only caution, distance. They saw the storm building in Anakin, but they closed the windows and pretended. The sky was clear, and still the visions grew worse. Then the voice came, silken, patient, precise, Palpatin. He found Anakin alone, not by accident. You were troubled, he said, not asking, but knowing. Anakin, too tired to lie, nodded. Palpatine stepped closer, eyes soft. There are ways. Ways the Jedi would never tell you. Ways to preserve life, even from death. Anakin froze, and the dark side did not pounce. It offered, not in cruelty, but in comfort. Darth Plagueis, the Chancellor said, was a Dark Lord of the Sith. So powerful, he could influence the midichlorians to create life, to keep the ones he cared about from dying. It was not a story. It was a hook in the soul. Anakin did not ask how. He only asked, is it possible to learn this power? And Palpatine smiled, a smile older than empires, not from a Jedi. In that moment, the path shifted, not by action, but by need, had not yet fallen. He had only stepped closer to the edge, but the Force, that ancient river, had already begun to twist its current toward the abyss, back in the temple. He was summoned again, told to spy, to watch Palpatine, to betray the only one who spoke to his fear like a friend. The Council offered loyalty. Palpatine offered answers. Anakin's heart tore in two, not between light and dark, but between truth and helplessness, and the visions did not stop. They now woke him from meditation. They followed him into battle. He would swing his saber and see Padme dying in the smoke. The future was bleeding into the present, and no one, not even the Jedi, could see it. The prophecy, too, had become a chain. Bring balance to the Force, they said. But what is balance to a man losing everything? Balance is a lie to those who bleed for it. And in secret, Anakin stood beneath the Jedi Temple, where the old statues had long eroded. He looked up at the broken face of a forgotten master. If I must break the galaxy to save her, then let it be broken, and far away, in the vaults of the Sith eternal, the names of unborn children echoed in shadow. Leia, Luke, Dot, and the dark knew it must strike soon. Before hope took form, Chapter 7, the mask offered in mercy, the Jedi Temple stood in silence, but beneath that silence cracks. Hairline fractures in belief, in loyalty, in the very stone, and within those cracks, Anakin Skywalker began to fall, not from grace. The Jedi had never granted him that, but from hope, the final light he still held in shaking hands. He stood, alone in the war chamber, watching systems flicker red across the galactic map, planets burning, soldiers dying, politics suffocating the republic he had sworn to serve, and in the center of it all, a single question that echoed like a wound in the Force. What price would you pay to save her? Palpatine called him to the opera house, a cathedral of sound, where voices rose in ancient tongues and masked dancers swirled in ritual. There, beneath the gold, truth was unmasked. The Chancellor turned to him slowly, eyes soft with centuries of planning. The Jedi do not trust you. They never did. Anakin said nothing. Because it was true. You must choose your allegiance soon, Palpatine murmured. The Jedi seek power, but lack vision. They would let your wife die to preserve their doctrine. And then, like a knife slipped between ribs, I can save her. Anakin's breath caught. The Force froze. What did you say? Palpatine did not blink. You know what I am. You have known for some time. The dark side is not evil, Anakin. It is freedom. It is will. And it can preserve the one you love. The mask was now offered, not to hide, but to breathe. Stood between twin blades, one made of law, and one made of truth, cloaked in shadow. He left the opera not with answers, but with the fire already lit, back in the temple. The council questioned him. Their voices sharp, their orders unclear. They spoke of watching Palpatine, of spying, of using him to find a Sith. But Anakin already knew. And worse, he did not want to stop him. Not yet, in his chambers, he knelt, not to pray, but to bargain. Show me how to save her. The Force gave no answer, only a pressure, a waiting dot, as if the cosmos itself leaned closer to watch a candle flicker just before it dies. Then came the turning point. Mace Windu, rigid and unreadable, received. Word, Palpatine was the Sith Lord. He moved swiftly. No hesitation. He told Anakin, stay here. But Anakin had been left behind too many times, ignored too long, loved too fiercely. He followed. What he found was war in miniature, swords of light drawn, lightning carving the walls, power unleashed. Unmasked, twisted by the dark, struck down Jedi masters like paper. Windu, fierce and unwavering, held the line, held the blade. He's too dangerous to be left alive. But Anakin's mind was no longer his own. He saw Padme's death again and again. I need him. A blade swung, a choice made. Anakin's hand moved, and Windu's fell. Silence. Lightning then, breath. Palpatine rose, scarred now by his own unleashed power, and smiled with sacrament. You are ready, my apprentice. Kneel. Anakin knelt, not in worship, but in desperation. What is thy will, my master? The name was given Darth Vader. It was not a title, It was a mask made of fire. It was not worn. It was carved. Palpatine's words dripped like ritual. The Jedi are traitors. Go, cleanse the temple. Let no one survive. This is your birthright. Anakin rose, but it was not Anakin now. The love that once lit his soul had been repurposed. The mask offered in mercy had become the face of annihilation. He marched with clone troopers. He entered the temple. Children ran to him, calling him Master Skywalker. He ignited his saber, and the Force, for the first time in millennia, screamed, and far away, on a moon wreathed in ash, the last living tree of the Jedi wilted. Its leaves turned black and fell. Chapter 8. The temple burned with children inside. They called him Master Skywalker, with eyes filled, not with fear, but with trust. They did not know that he was no longer Skywalker. They did not see that the man before them was already dying. Inside, only one knew, only the Force, and it had already turned its face away. Darth Vader, cloaked still in Jedi robes, walked through the gates of the Jedi Temple, not as a hero, not as a knight, but as a plague wearing the skin of salvation. Behind him, the 501st Legion followed. Clone troopers, soldiers made for war, trained to obey. No questions, no mercy. The temple was quiet, not from peace, but from suspicion. Some sensed it, felt the tremble, a shudder in the marble, a warning from the floor. Something sacred had already died, but the bodies had not yet fallen. Masters rose to confront the storm, swords lit, words called. None of it mattered. Vader struck first, not with anger, but with resolve. His blade was no longer a tool. It was an execution writ in light. They begged, they bled, they burned. He fought without sound, not rage, not hate, only necessity, as he had been promised. This is the only way. He whispered, but there was no one left to hear. In the training halls, younglings gathered. They had felt the tremors, heard the distant screams, but still believed in protection. One boy stepped forward. Master Skywalker, what do we do? And in that moment, the last of Anakin died. He raised his saber. The blue light reflected in the child's widening eyes. The blade fell, again and again, until there was only silence. Elsewhere in the temple, scrolls turned to ash, statues cracked, holocrons shattered in despair. The Force coiled around itself, choking on its own failure. Obi-Wan, far from the carnage, felt a sickness in his bones. Something terrible has happened, he whispered, but even he could not grasp the scale of the severance. Not yet, Yoda. Deep in meditation, opened his eyes and wept. The echo reached even Kashyyyk. The Wookiees turned their faces toward the stars and howled. Something had broken not a rule, not a temple, but the spine of the light itself. Back in the halls of the once sacred order, Vader walked alone. His hands shook. He looked down, not at bodies, but at ghosts. He heard them, whispers, not angry, not accusing, only asking, why? He did not answer. He could not. He stepped over them and left nothing behind. Outside, Coruscant did not stir. The city carried on. Markets opened. Transports flew. No one knew that the heart of the galaxy had just been hollowed out. Palpatine watched the holofeeds. He smiled. Now, Lord Vader, the Jedi are no more. A pause. A murmur beneath breath. And the boy you once were, he never existed. And somewhere on a world far from stars, a woman named Padam clutched her chest. She could not explain. Why? She could not speak it. But something she loved had just been erased from time, and deep beneath Mortis, in the tomb of the father, the statues of the daughter and son crumbled in tandem. A balance once possible was now impossible. Only hunger remained. Chapter 9. The last light flickers on Utapau Temple burned behind him. But it was not ash that followed Anakin Skywalker. It was silence. The silence of children lost. The silence of truths buried. The silence of a name that no longer fit the skin it wore. He had obeyed. He had sacrificed. He had transformed. But in the chambers of Palpatine's throne room, there was no celebration. Only commands. The Separatists must be dealt with, the Sith Lord whispered. End the war. End it all. And so the dark servant took wing. Across the stars. To Mustafar, where lava sang songs of old gods. But that tale waits. For before fire, there was water. Before betrayal, there was a brother. And the last light flickered not in Coruscant's hollow sky, but on the quiet world of Utapau there. The last hope wore Jedi robes and bore the name Obi-Wan Kenobi. He hunted General Grievous, a warlord stitched from metal and memory, a mockery of the living force, and he succeeded. Blade met bone, justice met vengeance, and Grievous fell, a shell screaming in sparks. But as Obi-Wan stood over the corpse, he did not feel peace. He felt a tremor, a cold that reached backward, a wound in time, a severance. He returned to Coruscant and found the world changed, the temple silent, the council gone, the order hunted, and Anakin was missing. Then came the whisper, from Bail Organa, from hidden corridors, from trembling clone survivors, and finally from Padma herself. He's gone, Obi-Wan. I don't know who he is anymore. He asked where. She answered Mustaf, the red world, the place of endings. He saw the fear in her. He saw the child in her womb, and something inside him shattered quietly. I must go to him, he said. I must bring him back. She nodded, but her eyes already mourned, not for Anakin, but for the man who would have to kill his brother. He hid aboard her ship. They left together, toward the pyre, and far away in the deep hollows of Dagobah, a cave pulsed with new darkness. Inside, a reflection formed, not of what was, but of what soon must be. Chapter 10. The fire where brothers break the red world greeted them in silence. Mustafa, a world of fire and iron. Rivers of lava flowed like veins, and the sky boiled. In mourning here, the architects of war waited, the final separatist leaders, huddled in their fortress, unaware that death no longer marched in legions, but in the boots of a single man. Darth Vader arrived, not armored yet, but no longer Anakin. His steps echoed like judgment through the halls. They rose to greet him, offering datapads, pleas, bargains. He said nothing. His blade did all the speaking. Within minutes they lay strewn in pieces. The war, as the galaxy knew it, was over. Not by negotiation, not by peace, but by execution. And still, he felt no relief, only the hunger, the ever-widening hollow in his chest. I have done everything. Where is her safety? Where is her salvation? He looked toward the stars, awaiting his master's next order. But the next knock came not from darkness, but from Padma. Her ship descended like a final question. She ran to him, tears on her face. Anakin, what have you done? He pulled her close, held her, as though the universe itself might break her apart. I did it for you, he whispered. They were going to destroy us, but I've stopped them. I've saved you, Padme. But her eyes widened, not in awe, not in love, but in fear. This isn't you. This isn't the man I married. And then, from the shadows, OBI-1. He stepped down the ramp, not with anger, but with mourning in his bones. Anakin's face changed. The grip on Padme's arm tightened. The Force trembled. You brought him here, he growled. To betray me? No, Pad, Min gasped. Anakin, please. But there was no reasoning left. Only the sword. Only the flame. He released her, and she collapsed. Struggling to breathe, Obi-Wan's saber hissed to life. You have done that yourself, he said. The duel began. Not a fight. A funeral. Blades clashed. Not as weapons, but as words that could no longer be spoken. From the high catwalks to the shores of liquid fire, they moved like twin storms, one of regret, one of rage. Obi-Wan pleaded, Palpatine is evil. He's blinded you, Anakin screamed back. I brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire. The words were not his. They were the Dark's. And still he believed them. He struck like a tempest. But Obi-Wan was not fighting to win. He was fighting to save. And then the high ground, the blade raised. The moment paused. Don't try. But Anakin, driven by pride, by desperation, by the illusion that he must be unstoppable, leapt. Obi-Wan's blade met his fall in a flash. It was over. Anakin fell, screaming, flaming, his legs severed, his arm gone, his body consumed by Mustafa's wrath. He slid toward the lava's edge, grasping the dirt, screaming in hate, in betrayal, in grief. Obi-Wan stood over him, sobbing. You were the chosen one. It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them, bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness. Anakin's eyes, yellow with fire, met his. I hate you. Obi-Wan turned away, not because he wished to, but because he had to. He took Anakin's saber, the last piece of the boy he had raised, and left him there to die. But death is not always granted. The flames rose. The scream pierced the Force, and in that scream something ancient awakened, and deep in the void between stars, a broken holocron lit for the first time in 1,000 years. Its guardian whispered, the wound is made, the vessel is ready. Chapter 11. The armor that screamed when worn he should have died. The flames of Mus had claimed all else flesh, hope, destiny. He lay there, broken, a figure of writhing smoke and charred hate, blistered by his own choices. He could not move, could not scream, only burn. But the dark was not finished. Far above Darth, Sidious felt the moment of Anakin's ruin, and smiled. He came swiftly, not as a savior, but as a collector. He found the remains, barely breathing, barely human, and he laughed. My apprentice, so much pain, so much power. There was no rescue, only reconstruction, only ritual. He was taken to the deep halls beneath Imperial Center, where the dead things of Sith alchemy and ancient technology are fused, where Bacta tanks glowed like tombs, and surgical droids chanted like priests. What remained of Anakin was laid upon the table, and the process began. Metal fused with nerve. Bone was replaced by durasteel. The lungs were broken and filled with breath not made by the Force, but by machines. They remade his arms, his legs, his spine, and finally, the mask. It hovered above his face, its lenses wide and cold. its mouth a deathless gate. He could not speak, he could not beg. There was no mercy, only Sidious's voice, calm, triumphant. "Arise, Lord Vader." The mask descended, it sealed, and then the scream. Not a roar, not anger, a soul-tearing wail, trapped forever beneath iron. The last shred of Anakin Skywalker howling as it died. No one heard it, only the Force, and it wept. He awoke, the world was mechanical. Muted, he breathed, not with lungs, but with chains. "Where is Padam?" The voice was wrong, filtered, hollow. Sidious, ever the puppeteer, delivered the final cut. "It seems, in your anger, you killed her." The scream returned, but this one shattered stone. The Force twisted around it like a funeral spiral. In that moment, Vader did not collapse. He solidified, not as Jedi, not as man, but as a monument to failure. As a weapon of eternal mourning, they clad him in black, polished him for fear, displayed him like a god. But inside was only the sound of burning children, of her voice calling his name, of his own hand reaching too late. Now he stood not on legs, but stilts of wrath. Now he saw not through eyes, but through regret-shaped glass. The galaxy met him as shadow. Stormtroopers knelt. Officers trembled. No one asked, "Who is he?" They only asked, "What will he do?" And what he did was obey, not with faith, not with pride, but because he had nothing else. Sidious unleashed him, a tool, a legend, a weapon. Vader, and in the hidden groves of Naboo, a tomb was carved for Padme Amidala, her hands folded over her belly, 2 lives never born, and 1 man never returned. Chapter 12. The Empire rises on bones of light. The Republic died with applause, not screams, not resistance, just ... applause. On the floor of the former Senate, Sheev Palpatine stood, cloaked, scarred, and righteous. He spoke not as tyrant, but as savior. "The attempt on my life has left me scarred and deformed, but I assure you, my resolve has never been stronger." He told them of betrayal, of treachery, of the Jedi rebellion, a lie so colossal it warped history on the spot. He named himself Emperor, not with conquest, but with consent. The chamber roared. The chains were welcomed far beneath. In the newly constructed temple of the Inquisition, Jedi relics were burned, lightsabers shattered, holocrons melted to slag. Their names were erased, their statues pulled down except one, hidden in a vault, no longer marked Obi-Wan Kenobi status. Unknown Darth Vader stood at the Emperor's side, silently the Dark Sentinel. No one dared look at him for long. He did not speak, he did not gesture. He only existed, and that was terror enough. Across the stars, the Empire spread like plague bloom. Clone troopers were phased out. Stormtroopers rose in white armor, less brothers, more tools. Inquisitors were born, once Jedi, now twisted. Hunters of the last lights. Each system was brought to heel, and those who questioned, they simply vanished. Worlds trembled at the name Vader. He was not a man. He was a verdict. He destroyed a temple on Lothal, choked a senator to silence on Ryosa, oversaw executions on Gorse, burned archives on Jedha, and each time he looked skyward, searching for something he could not name. But not all lights were extinguished. In the shadows of a quiet world, Obi-Wan Kenobi buried his name. He watched over the boy, Luke, the sun, the galaxy, must never know, in another corner of the galaxy. Yoda disappeared into a swamp, his wisdom now hidden from all but time itself, and in the heart of Alderaan, Bail Organa cradled a child. With her mother's eyes, Leia, the second ember, the Force stirred, slowly, softly, but it had not forgotten. It whispered through dying trees, through broken sabers, through dreams. There is another. The Emperor ruled. Vader served. And yet, in the silence of his chambers aboard the Executor, he sometimes stood before the stars and saw her face again, Padma. He could no longer remember the color of her voice, but the pain was perfect. One night, alone, he reached into the Force, not to crush, not to dominate, to feel. And he felt something far away, flickering, bright. A presence not yet awakened, a boy, a light. He did not know his name, but he knew he had his saber. And on Tatooine, a boy stared at the twin suns, dreaming of stars. The Force breathed, not loud, but certain. Chapter 13. The sun and the saber, the sands of Tatooine remember nothing. They do not mourn. They do not record, but the Force remembers. Beneath twin suns, it watched as a boy ran across the dunes, laughing, shouting, alive. A name followed him in the wind, Luke. He did not know what he was, did not know that his very breath trembled. The ancient prophecies, did not know that his shadow had once shared the shape of a monster. He only knew he wanted to leave, to fly, to fight, to matter. Far off, in the Jundland wastes, an old man watched him through dust and silence. Obi-Wan Kenobi no longer bore his name. Now he was Ben, a ghost in plain robes, a guardian not allowed to speak. He felt Luke's spirit grow, wild, untamed, hungry, and he waited, because the time was not yet, until the droids came, a fragment of fate hidden in rusted metal. Eridors, Deodors, citrus paw. They carried more than messages. They carried ignition within them, a signal, a plea, from a girl who did not know her brother, Leia, but called him anyway. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. The words fell like a blade. Obi-Wan stirred from his cave, pulled a box from beneath the floor, wrapped in cloth, sacred. Inside, Anakin's saber, still blue, still burning, still waiting. He placed it in the boy's hand. Luke held it like a question, ignited it like a future he didn't yet believe. The room glowed. Your father wanted you to have this. He lied not out of deceit, but protection. For truth, in full, would have shattered him. They left the desert, followed echoes, traced fragments, met Han Solo, a smuggler with a price, met Chewbacca, a loyal beast of war and sorrow, and then they saw the Empire, the Death Star, not just a weapon, but a cathedral of fear. Vader felt it the moment the boy stepped aboard, the saber, the blood, the tremor. I sensed something, a presence I've not felt since. He did not finish the thought, because even he could not believe what the Force was whispering. They escaped, but not without loss. Obi-Wan remained behind, faced the monster he once named. Brother. The sabers crossed. Briefly, but the battle was not fought with strikes. It was fought with acceptance. He looked to Luke. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And then the blade passed through him. He fell not as a body, but as a presence. Luke cried out, but the voice answered from beyond, not gone, not lost, only elsewhere. And in the cold heart of space, Vader stood at a window, gazing into the stars, where the boy had vanished. He carries my saber. Why? Who taught him to hold it that way? What name did he shout when I killed the old man? Chapter 14. The ghosts that whisper his name. He moved through shadow and fire. No longer the boy in the desert, but not yet the man the galaxy would fear or follow. Luke Skywalker. He carried his father's blade, but not his father's hatred. He carried questions, but no truths. Not yet. The rebellion bled through the stars. Small, flickering, hunted, but still alive. Because hope, no matter how fragile, cannot be crushed by boot or blaster. And now, hope had a name. Vader stalked that name across the stars, not just as a threat, not just as a Jedi, but as something he did not understand. The boy moved like him, fought like him. His anger came fast, but his mercy came faster. Vader did not know what disturbed him more. In a moment of silence, he reached through the Force, stretched across hyperspace like a broken god. And what he found there was like Luke, untrained, unshaped, but dangerous, because the boy did not yet know what he was capable of, and so he had no fear. Elsewhere, in the jungle world of Dagobah, Luke descended into mist and vine. Guided by the whisper of Ben, he sought Yoda, small in stature, ancient in burden. There Luke was unmade, and then remade. He trained, he fell, he rose, but the cave called to him, and in that cave, he saw the mask. He struck it down, quick, fearful. The mask fell away, and beneath it, his own face. He left the jungle shaking. Yoda warned him, if you honor what they fight for, stay. But the vision burned in his chest. Liahan, pain, he went to Cloud City, to trap. Vader waited, not with rage, but with calculation. He had no desire to kill the boy. He wanted understanding. He wanted power. He wanted connection. They fought Luke, wild and furious. Vader calm, overwhelming. There was no true contest, only the ritual, blade on blade, metal against youth, until Luke's hand fell, his saber tumbled, and the scream echoed through the shaft. Then came the words that shattered the galaxy. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. He told me enough. He told me you killed him. No, I am your father. Time stopped. The Force held its breath. Luke's scream was not just denial. It was the breaking of belief. He chose death, chose fall, chose void better, the unknown, than the truth that burns. But he survived. And now the ghosts came. Ben in echo. Yoda in riddle, the saber now lost. But in Luke's hand, another weapon began to grow, clarity, and in a chamber, deep aboard the Executor. Vader stood alone, gazing at the stars through glass that never reflected his face. He is not ready, but he is mine. Chapter Sav. 15. The saber forged in midnight, the blue saber was gone. Lost to the pit of truth, carried with a severed hand, as if the Force itself demanded a clean break from inheritance. And so the boy returned, not to the jungle, not to the battlefield, but to the beginning on a lonely moon. Dagobah, Luke knelt before the ancient Jedi Master once more. The swamp did not greet him. The trees did not welcome him, because now he was no longer a seeker of guidance. He was a vessel of choice. Yoda was dying. Time had worn even his kind down to mist. His breath shallow, his skin translucent. He spoke not as teacher, but as the last witness of a vanished age. No more training do you require. Already know you that which you need. Luke asked the question that haunted his steps, is Darth Vader, my father. Yoda looked away, as though the trees themselves might object. Then, the truth. Your father, he is. Told you, did he? Yes. A pause. Waited. Unexpected, this is. And unfortunate. The old master gave one final prophecy, thin as dust, but sharp as glass. When gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be. Pass on what you have learned. And then he faded, not with agony, not with fear, but as a candle snuffed by time. Luke stood alone, no saber, no master, no clear path. But the Force whispered, you must forge what is yours. He returned to Tatooine, not as farm boy, but as ghost. In Ben Kenobi's hut, he found what he needed. Fragments, crystals, designs left behind, like a will unspoken. He built it slowly, without haste. Without error, the hilt was black and silver, lean, precise. Inside, the Kyber crystal hummed, not in blue, not in red, but green. The first activation was not grand. It was quiet, sacred, a slow rise of emerald light in the dark. It did not sing, like Anakin's blade. It did not roar like Vader's. It spoke softly. I am yours. He left the desert again, but this time, not as boy. He returned to the rebellion, cloaked in black. Calm as a still lake hiding storms beneath, Leia saw the change. Han did not know what to say. Luke gave no speeches. Only truths. I must face him. Vader, no, my father. He turned himself in. Voluntarily, allowed stormtroopers to bind his hands. Allowed Vader to lead him aboard the shuttle. They stood together again, father and son, but this time Luke did not flinch. I know there is good in you. The Emperor hasn't driven it from you fully. Vader did not respond. Not at first. When he finally spoke, his voice was distant. You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master. Luke looked at him not as enemy, but as possibility. Then my father is truly dead. And for the first time in years, the mask turned away. And far above Endor, the stars gathered in silence, watching the pieces. A line for prophecy's final move. Chapter 16. The throne and the threshold above the forest moon of Endor. A weapon floated, the second Death Star, incomplete in form, but not in purpose. It was not a space station. It was a cathedral of annihilation. Luke was brought before its heart, not a cell, not an execution chamber, but a throne room, hanging. In the void, there, seated like a wraith, stitched from shadows and supremacy, was Emperor Palpatine. His voice was velvet. His smile, a dagger. Welcome, young Skywalker. I have been expecting you. Vader stood behind Luke, silent, towering, a sentinel cloaked in secrets. But Luke did not look at him. His eyes were fixed on the Emperor. Soon you will call me Master. Luke said nothing. He was not there to fight. Not yet. The Emperor gestured to the stars beyond. The rebellion approached, hope incarnate. But he knew, he always knew. Everything that has transpired has done so according to my design. He showed Luke the truth, the trap, the deception, the inevitability of defeat. He offered only one escape, hatred. Strike me down, fulfill your destiny, take your father's place at my side. Vader did not move. Luke's fists clenched, his heart surged, anger, desperation, fear. He looked to his saber then. He let it fall. You've failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me. The words cracked the air like thunder, and the mask flinched. Palpatine's smile vanished, and in its place, lightning, the Force bent, screamed. Bolts of pure agony tore from his fingers and struck Luke. The boy convulsed, fell, burned, double quotes, "You will die," the Emperor hissed in despair. Vader watched, hands unmoved, feet planted, but inside, a war he had long buried began to rise. He heard Padme's voice, he saw a child's laughter. He felt the blue blade, the one he had built and broken. He heard Luke cry out, "Father, please," and then he chose. The darkness fell away, not in triumph. In grief he lifted the Emperor. Lightning arced through his body. Circuits fried, armor ruptured. He screamed, not in anger, but in release, and with one final surge, he cast Palpatine into the core. The scream echoed down into silence. Luke crawled to him, tried to lift him, but Vader was already crumbling, not in flesh, but in mask. "Help me take this mask off, but you'll die. Nothing can stop that now. Just let me look on you with my own eyes." And beneath the mask there was not a monster, only Anakin, pale, weary, free. "You were right, Luke. You were right about me. Tell your sister you were right." He died with his son beside him, not as a Sith, but as the man who chose to save, not destroy. The station collapsed. The rebellion surged. The Empire fractured. And on the forest moon, Luke burned the armor, not as a trophy, but as a mourning pyre. Asterisk, and in the glow, the Force shimmered. Anakin stood beside Obi-Wan, beside Yoda, no longer chained to destiny, only at peace. Asterisk, chapter 17. The silence after the fire, the fires of Endor burned high above them. The stars shivered, free of the Emperor's gaze, for the first time in an age. The people danced, they sang, they believed they had won. But the Force did not celebrate. It waited. Luke Skywalker stood alone beside the pyre, not as warrior, not as victor, as son. The armor cracked and folded into itself. Consumed by flame, it made no sound, not even the hiss of molten metal, as though the Force itself refused to let the galaxy hear his passing. He had saved his father, but not with lightning, not with a blade, with truth, the kind that binds one soul to another, even when every law of fate denies it. Elsewhere, the galaxy began to move. The Empire did not vanish. It fractured. Warlords rose in Palpatine's shadow. Admirals declared themselves emperors of dust. The rebellion became the new republic. But not all welcomed its return. Old wounds festered. Systems remembered Jedi not as heroes, but as ghosts. Who failed them? The Jedi were still extinct. Only one remained, and he was not ready. Luke wandered for years, not to conquer, not to avenge, but to listen to ruins, to temples, to whispers buried in stone and memory. He found holocrons, fragments, names lost to time, but no one to guide him, because those who might have taught him had already turned to stars he dreamed of. Anakin often, but never in armor. He saw the man, before the fall, smiling, building, hoping, and sometimes he heard a voice, "You must build again, but do not build as we did." So Luke lit the forge, not in fire, but in hope. He sought students. He opened the path, and the Jedi were born again, not in temples, but in possibility. But the Force remembers. It does not forget prophecy, or failure, or pain, and in the cracks of time, a darkness stirred, not of Vader, not of Palpatine, something new, something new, something familiar and far away. In the unknown regions, a voice whispered through old machines, "There is no balance, only return." Chapter 18. The prophecy, fulfilled or broken. They spoke of balance as if it were a still thing, a stone placed evenly between light and dark. But balance is not stillness, it is conflict contained, a blade that trembles before it cuts. And Anakin Skywalker was that blade, from slave to Jedi to Sith to Ghost. He was all of them, and none of them. The Jedi had believed in destiny, but they misunderstood its cruelty. They saw a chosen one, but not the cost of choosing. Did he bring balance? Yes, but not the way they imagined. He cleansed the Jedi, he purged the Sith, he burned away the excess. He left behind only the possibility of harmony, one light, one shadow, and the son who could walk between both. Luke was never the chosen one. He was the result of the chosen one's choice, the fruit of the fire, the breath after the scream. And what of the Sith? They were broken, scattered, but not destroyed, because darkness is not a name. It is a hunger, and hunger does not die. It sleeps, the Force, ancient and unknowable, watches still. It does not judge, it simply waits, because another will rise, another will fall, and in every age, someone will believe they are destined. But Anakin, his story is done, not as myth, not as symbol, as man. A man who fell, a man who broke, a man who chose, at the very end, not to serve power, but to save. A son that prophecy was not a promise, it was a warning. And now, the galaxy must decide what to do with peace, when it no longer has monsters to blame. And somewhere, in a place between shadow and starlight, a figure walks through a field untouched. By time he looks back, but not in regret, only in memory. He is not Jedi, he is not Sith, he is simply Anakin.